Hi, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. I'm delighted this afternoon to be joined by Anne Bland. Anne is a coach and mentor with a range of experience, but mostly she's going to be talking this afternoon about how selfishly happy you, which I think is going to be a really fascinating topic. It's how do business people become selfishly happy? So, Anne, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science 5 Questions Over Coffee. Looking forward to talking with you enormously today.
Thank you so much, Stuart, for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
So can we just start by sort of helping to define or people to understand the sort of person that you're looking to help?
Right. My clients often are professionals who are leaders in their fields, either as entrepreneurs or working in an organization who kind of try to balance the work and life and not quite succeeding in that. So maybe one of them is well managed, but the other one is not. So it's like kind of that compartmentalization that we all kind of resort to as a go-to method when we try to struggle too many things. It's easier to put
Mm,
things in a box, if you see what I mean,
mm.
and
I
not
do,
realize
I
that they're
do.
interlinked.
And they are interlinked as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Even though we want to all pretend that somehow we are superheroes, we are human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we are really not super beings, I think. What's the question? We're supposed to be human beings, not human
Mm,
doings, and definitely not super doers. So I definitely have a lot in my CV, as you said, and I think that's the culprit why I've burned out myself a few times in my life, and it's not really something that I take pride in. Because everybody is about to in modern stressful life to burn out or get exhausted once in their
mm,
lifetime, but not 3 times. I mean, you
mm.
start thinking, what's gone wrong there? So I think I've learned my lesson and really got my teeth in over the last 5-6 years to understand what makes us happy, joyful, pleasure-filled human beings.
So we'll come on to that, I think, in a minute, Anne, because I think there's some really good stuff you've got to say. But let's start by talking about the sort of things that people have done
Mhm.
who are perhaps not quite getting the help they need that you can provide. What is it that they've done themselves to try and resolve some of these issues? How would they recognize themselves and go, oh, wait, they're talking about me. Perhaps this is the time when I should really start to take notice.
I think it is that compartmentalization I said earlier, where you want to kind of put things in particular boxes and, okay, I leave that there. My marriage is not very good, or my work life, I'm struggling in particular relationships, and I try to kind of just avoid that. The other
Mm,
thing is because there is some other aspects in life that are bringing fulfillment and joy and sense of achievement. The other thing I see is that people just tend to plow through stress. So there is this kind of magical thinking that if I just get into the Christmas, or if I can just get into the before the summer holiday starts, if I can get through this week and then it's the weekend and I can catch up and relax, or but it doesn't happen that way, unfortunately. And then the other thing is that I see a lot is that people don't think, especially men, that self-care is something that one ought to be investing in. And if they ask their family, they say, "Yeah, why don't you just look after yourself a little bit?" And there is that kind of opportunity to actually learn what makes each one of us more calm, happier, more pleasure-filled, and peaceful, and also joyful to be around with. And I think it's that kind of understanding that self-care is not just for women, or self-care is something that actually needs to be one of those pillars that we invest in and get tremendous return on investment, I'd say, regardless who you are, regardless of your status, regardless of your agenda.
So let's talk about some of those things that you do to help people understand that self care, that ability to as you put it in your bylines, to be selfishly happy. And selfishly has got a bad reputation, hasn't it? But actually, a bit like when you're on a flight, it tells you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before helping anybody else, because how can you possibly help somebody else if you've fallen unconscious or and you are unable to sort of do anything? So let's talk a little bit about what does it mean to be selfishly happy. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then perhaps you could I know you've got some things, some valuable advice, some valuable free things that you'd like to sort of bring to the audience. So perhaps you could describe those and talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so putting that oxygen mask on yourself first before helping others is something that I talk a lot about, because I feel that again, it's embedded in my own experience. I'm a very passionate person. I want to change the world. I want peace and happiness all around. And then I realized that, when you work in that kind of social impact or environmental impact scene, you tend to burn out very quickly because you can't control the externalities. And the only thing I can change is how I react, how I feel, and what kind of energy I bring into any table, any situation, any relationship, any work. And I think that's the key. It's really kind of going in. And that's why I call it selfishly happy, because it is putting that oxygen mask on yourself first. And also, if you become selfless, like we're all told, especially women, that, oh, you just need to serve others, you need to be helpful, and don't put yourself, it's bad, it's egoistic. And I'm not talking about egocentricity. I'm talking about becoming more of you, becoming self-full in a way, because selfless can become quite toxic eventually. It can become, a person can become bitter or a doormat or a people pleaser, or that there is a balance to be had. And I believe if we are in good health, if we are in good energy, we are happy, we have so much more to give up to others and to the world at large. So there is this kind of understanding that it starts from within, and more we can regulate our own nervous system, just talking about sort of neuroscience spiel, it's more important to actually regulate your own nervous system so that you don't come across as aggressive, or you don't come across as somebody who is just there for themselves, or just avoiding situations that actually benefit from having frank discussions, for instance. So it is that kind of play with words, if you like. And I do know that lots of people are like, well, you can't say selfish. And I said, well, let's just really understand what's behind it, as opposed to get into the preconceived idea. So it is kind of deliberate to stop people to think and kind of, what do I actually mean by that? What is it to become happy truly? It is to know what you need. It is know how to get what you need. And it is understanding what your fears and anxieties are and taking care of those.
So we've got a question from Mark, and perhaps this leads into some of what you're going to talk about in terms of the valuable free advice you've got for our audience. But Mark asks, in your opinion, what does self-care look like for a man? And I suspect it probably isn't just going to the nail spa and getting your nails done. Although, let's face it could be that. But I mean, what is it that you would say men in particular should be looking for in terms of what they need to do to care for themselves, to make them efficient and effective human beings?
Thank you, Mark. That's a very good question, and I really appreciate you raising your hand and asking that question. It looks very different to different people, of course, regardless what gender you are. But there is a lot of energy that men have. That I think, for instance, exercise is something that often men don't do, because it is something that, there are responsibilities at home, there's responsibilities at work. So it is very easy to stop that and maybe then just sit down when you're exhausted and open the telly, open a can of beer, And nothing, no judgment there, but it could be something that, what is it that, and I think whoever you are, is to really ask that question, to do that pausing and kind of do the list. What is it that really makes me feel good? For somebody it is, have a good male friend who loves art. He just goes to the art classes on every Saturday morning. He just goes off and does art, whether it's painting flowers or painting nudes, I don't know, but it is amazing that you can just kind of realize that, okay, what makes me happy? What is the time when I can play chess with somebody on the other side of the world, or do a game of some sort? It is that, but also it is the need to spend time on your own. And I think one of the biggest things I've noticed with relationships is that often, especially if one of the in the relationship is a homemaker, they often feel very isolated, or they just yearn for having an adult conversation, and the other one comes from work and just yearns for solitude and yearns for having, let me just get my coat off, and let me just have 5 minutes to actually state those boundaries and saying, look, can I just have my 10 minutes? And I'll just go to the bedroom, get changed, and I just lie down for a while. I just need to empty my head and land into the home life. And I think this is very important, that people learn to communicate what they need, so that they don't become begrudged and oppressed and suppressed just because we tend to please people that we love.
Just a small insight from my own life, which I think sort of illustrates the difficulties with this. In my household, there were two very busy professionals, both pushing hard at their career, and a child. And it was a rule that the one that picked up the child from nursery or school, got home, did childcare, and the other one would spend 10 minutes on the drive before they came in, because the minute they walked through the door, responsibility passed to the other one, because they hadn't had their downtime. And so therefore there was this sort of it was unwritten, we had discussed it, but it was the rule that you spend the 10 minutes in the car decompressing, because the minute you walk through the door, I haven't had my 10 minutes to decompress.
Yeah.
And immediately you've got the responsibility for making sure that nobody's doing anything silly, because I need to just go away for a few seconds. And it was quite difficult to balance, because sometimes they'd look and go, I may have had my 10 minutes in the car, but frankly, I could do with another 10 minutes in the house. And it's like, I don't care. I'm sorry. I need the time. So you've got to learn to communicate these things and balance them, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. And congratulations for that awareness and that practice, because that, again, it's not just about yourself, but it is starting from yourself. What do you need? And asking for it, communicating it with a kind of non-violent, loving way, and making the plan, and whether it's outspoken, whether it's a practice, but it is important to actually have that understanding. And I would always champion talking, because we often think that they understand, but often they don't. So it is good to actually spell it out and talk about it. I've got so many ideas that I could share here, but I want to keep it to your time limit. So over to you.
We have no time limit. If you wish to talk for the next hour, we will let you.
You don't know what you're unleashing here.
Oh, maybe 45 minutes. So, but there's obviously some stuff on your website which we could go and have a look at. Can you describe some of the stuff that we'll find there, and how we might access what we'll access it?
Well, my website is not actually very much geared towards things yet. It's something it's under development, but I really want to create a library of tools that people can start practicing, because I strongly believe that there is this culture at workplaces where people are demanded to push through that stress. Then the organizations are wondering, well, why the hell do we have such a staff turnover? And we all know how much staff turnover costs for organizations. well, actually, not everybody understands the wider impact. You might kind of look at the recruitment costs and teaching somebody to land in their new job, but actually it's not just that. It's somebody else working 3 to 4 jobs at the same time whilst they are recruiting a new person or somebody's learning. So it is also impact on their health and so on and so on. So there's lots of ripple effects. So to have a kind of library anywhere where we can actually drop in. For instance, I was just teaching today in another call, in another group, an old Taoist practice called the inner smile. And this is something I definitely want to put on the website, is how a busy person, even during the workday, can just take 2 minutes or even just 2 seconds and just practice inner smile. It's one of the most effective ways of getting your nervous system, which is often at during work days, in this kind of reactionary, stress response of fight flight, which is important. Otherwise, we don't get anything done. But we are also designed to be more a human being in that rest, digest, parasympathetic nervous system response, where we can sleep without needing to take sleeping pills or your normal whiskey or whatever. So it is important to not knowing whether you have whiskey. So I'm not saying, but I'm you know what I mean. It's very easy to think that in the morning we need coffee, in the evening we need an alcohol drink to calm us down. So it is kind of things like breath work. It is meditation. It is about doing embodiment practices, just like sport is, exercises, or just shaking and dancing a little bit to let that tension go. And stretching, just very simple things like this, and just learning how to breathe so that you can access that parasympathetic nervous system. So it is interesting how people think, well, of course I can breathe, of course I can smile, but how many actually do it? We got to, when we are in that stress response, even our breathing becomes like kind of, we hold breath a lot, and but when you actually get into that parasympathetic nervous system response, what I observe is that people start, there is that sigh, and there is, isn't it delicious just to be, and just relax. And you can just do this like a microsecond, and it will be money in the bank, in your energy bank, and well-being and happiness bank. So things like that,
Indeed.
quite simple things I'd like to offer to people.
Indeed. And I know the power of breathing myself, because I've been learning better breathing techniques myself for other reasons other than standing here doing this. And one of the things that we've been trying to learn how to do is the fact that when you breathe in, rather than sort of doing this with your shoulders, which is how we have to breathe, immediately bring the whole user's attention, is to just breathe deeply from down into the diaphragm, down low. And then you don't hold it, you just suspend, you just relax and allow the air to be there rather than thinking about it. And it's quite difficult to sort of turn your mindset to this ability to think, well, I'm just going to allow the breath to be in me. But it's actually really powerful because it stops you trying to sort of do. You learn how to sort of just enjoy the experience of saying, okay, I'm now standing, I'm completely relaxed. I'm not actually holding my tension anymore. And nothing's happened. The air hasn't just suddenly disappeared. It's still there. And then you can breathe out later. And it is a mindset thing, isn't it? Learning how to control your feelings, learning how to control all that. And it brings a sense of calm as you do it, because otherwise you're sort of fighting your body.
Yeah. And have you ever heard, this expression that any place, any organization is a reflection of the leader?
Absolutely. And I'm watching it with an organization now and just aware of we can talk a little bit about this. There is toxicity, and the suggestion from the management was shut down the office. We'll never change this culture. And I went, I think the culture starts here, and you can change the culture at the bottom if we just change one or two things around the management. And yet there was this sort of, oh no, if we just sack everybody, it'll solve the problem, which was a very disappointing thing to hear.
Yeah, I don't think organizational transformation works quite like that. But just as a simple example, just taking your breathing example, and you were saying that how it's so easy to kind of be like this, and just hunch, your shoulders are tense and all that. But the studies show that a person, in terms of body language, just the idea that who do you trust is somebody who has a long distance from ear to their shoulder. So when people were shown pictures, I was thinking, oh, I've got shoulder pads in this jacket. So, oh dear, should have chosen a different jacket or blouse. But it is that kind of when somebody's like this, you kind of, people were shown pictures, and when they were looking at people who were like this, it's kind of, oh, I don't trust that person. So if there is that kind of energy that somebody's going to launch at you, from the management, like you said, there is that toxicity. It's not going to change by changing the people who are below them. It is about, okay, how can we relax this boss or this C-suite in this organization, so that they can learn, like you just demonstrated, how you're breathing differently, and how you can just, and it's simple as that, because we are animals in so many ways. We have that primitive, ancient brain. And when we see somebody who actually holds themselves with esteem and has that posture of calmness, and we feel that, okay, they are in control. It's not like, you need to kind of, because they are, reflecting this fight flight, all the time. It's quite fascinating how this all kind of links together. And there are so many tools we can use in organizations where we kind of, okay, just micro pausing, just become aware, and then use habits like breathing, like inner smile, like just being present with your physical body through your 5 senses. What can you hear? What can you see? What can you feel? Just doing this, for 10 seconds, just trying to feel the ridges of your fingers with your if this, people can't see the picture, the video, it's just putting 2 fingers, like your thumb and your first finger, together, and for 10 seconds, which is about 3 breaths, to just move your fingers and just really focus on feeling the ridges of your skin on those fingertips. And even that simple 10-second 3 breath exercise will put you into your body, out of your thinking mind where the anxiety often lives, and just fall into your body and kind of, it doesn't have to be, even if you're in a meeting in a boardroom, and you can just do that when you start feeling anxious, it will help you to calm down and get into that parasympathetic nervous system. And there's so many other things.
And was there a particular book or course? I mean, you have a very, very wide career, but obviously this is something that's come to you. Is there a particular book or course that you read or took that actually started this journey for you?
Well, I think 10 years ago, when I burned out last time, and I decided to resign and divorce, and all sorts of things happened, and started learning everything. I was like a sponge. I realized that I didn't have joy and pleasure in my life. I'd just been on that kind of autopilot. Oh, just one more day, one more week, one more month, and I'll make it through, or whatever it is that we tell these quite toxic stories to ourselves, which is fine, because we're just trying to cope. It's okay. I'm not judging here. It's just that the society hasn't taught us how to look after ourselves. So I can't pinpoint. I'm really sorry. I can't. I know you asked this, and I can't just choose one. I can't choose one, because I've studied positive psychology and intelligence. I've studied breath work. I've studied how pleasure works for our favor. I've studied Taoism. I've studied so many things, neuroscience, neuroplasticity, all these kind of, how do we create positive habits so that we can look after ourselves, and then, each other, because like we said, the energy and the nervous system emits to others is going to impact other people, just like in that organizational structure, but also at home. So I've learned Tantra as well. I've learned so many different things in terms of philosophies, practices, and ways in which, I feel that if we have the self-awareness that, okay, this is what I need, how am I going to get it? So what are the tools and processes and practices? So having that self-mastery. And then eventually, how do we express ourselves in the world, in our relationships, in a more balanced, constructive way, so that we can actually have that impactful, passionate, mission, purpose-filled life? Because that's what every human being in the end of the day is looking for, is to have a meaningful life.
So that leads me, I guess, to the last question that I have for you this afternoon. I'll let you get on with something that I know you need to get on and do. And that,
Yeah.
is there a question I haven't asked you? Is there something that you're thinking, well, he's missed the point. He's just completely misunderstood what we're trying to do here. Is there a question that I should have asked, which you would like me to have asked? And obviously, then you have to answer it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, in terms of the not really. I think we've discovered quite a lot of things, and it's as long as a piece of string, isn't it? It's like kind of we can talk about this much. And when you said, "Oh, you have an open mic," I said, "You don't want that, because I will talk. I will talk for England. I will talk for the world." So no, I think I would perhaps invite people to ask questions if there is anybody in the audience that I don't know if Mark has already left.
Well, I'd say we had Mark who asked, and the only question he has made it, the further comment is, it's hard to be there for someone if you're going through stress and are struggling to deal with it. So Mark, my sympathies if that's your situation. I know how difficult it can be. And Mark has just given us a compliment, so that's very kind of you, Mark. Thank you very much for enjoying it, and I don't think I've done very much to contribute other than ask Anne the right questions, and you've got a huge amount of knowledge, a huge amount of value that you've added this afternoon. I really appreciate how much effort you've put into this, and I thank you very much for coming on and speaking to us. One thing, if Anne is in the process of building things, so you will continue to be able to see a lot of the free stuff that we have for this website, where people give away free advice. But if you go to go.systmise.com/free-stuff, you'll find a list of all the free things that people have given away. And if you would like to get an email every week, who just will tell you exactly who's coming up, so that you can join as Mark did today and spend some time asking questions of people like Anne, go to go.systmise.com/subscribe. It's a simple form, first name, email address, all we want, just so that you get an email which basically says who's coming up this week, and you've got the opportunity to join in the live and ask questions, as Anne has been here answering your questions. Anne, thank you so much for spending 20 minutes with us and talking about this. Really appreciate some of the advice. We'll all be touching our fingers in meetings in future, try to learn how to be more relaxed as we are presenting and talking to the boss. So thank you for those tips, and I really appreciate the time you spent with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this discussion.